Good morning. As we're approaching the closing weeks of the Iowa legislature, I thought it might be important to discuss the overall state budget, which I've talked about many times before, but I just want to make it really clear. When I decided to run for governor again, I made a commitment to the people of Iowa to correct the financial mismanagement and the political chicanery that had been going on with the budget, the use of trust fund money and one-time money for ongoing expenses, not funding entitlement programs, misleading the public as to level of funding, and then pushing those obligations into future years. And we've been dealing with those issues, and it now appears that we're going to get some of those resolved through the passage of Senate File 209. But I want to reiterate the importance of having a biennial budget and also the 5-year projections that we presented to the legislature, where we're spending each year less than we're taking in. And remember, with a 2-year budget, you cannot get by with the use of one-time money for ongoing expenses, because it shows in the second year that obviously you don't have the resources to pay for that particular program. So that's why it is important that we do that. And I intend to work closely with the legislature. There's a tendency sometimes at the end of the session to try to cut corners and make deals. I just want to make it clear that we're going to examine each and every appropriations bill based on the test of making sure that we do have a biennial budget, that we're doing honest budgeting, that we're not misleading the public, and that we do have a 5-year projection, and that what we're doing is going to be sustainable.
I know firsthand from my time in the Senate how challenging the last few weeks of session can be, but by working together, the administration, we are confident that we can resolve any outstanding issues. Many of the challenges that we face, as the governor indicated, are a result of bad budgeting practices in past years. But with the biennial budget, Iowans will no longer see programs underfunded and passed on to the next legislative session to solve. Governor Branstad and I look forward to a continued dialogue with the House and the Senate, and we believe that if we keep those communication lines open, that there aren't any issues that we can't resolve, and we will move the state of Iowa forward. So thank you.
I'm glad to respond to your questions.
Without a revenue estimate in the second year, isn't the budgeting that you're doing for the second year sort of built on kind of a sandy foundation?
We think, well, first of all, it's based on the Department of Management's numbers. And we could have had a revenue estimating conference estimate if the Senate Democrats had agreed to it. And just because they refused to agree to having the revenue estimating conference give us a second-year estimate, we feel very confident that second-year estimate, in light of strong agricultural economy. I think the estimate's about 3.9% growth in the second year. Remember, we're not even back right now to where we were in fiscal year 2009, and yet we have the highest farm prices we've ever had in the history of the state. So I think we can be confident that that revenue estimate, in fact, what's interesting is Senate Democrats are saying we're concerned that it's too conservative and that you're going to have too much money, and that we would like to spend that money rather than have it go to reduce taxes. Now, you know, we know there are some philosophical differences between Republicans and Democrats on whether it should go to reduce taxes or additional spending. But we think what we're putting together is very realistic, and obviously, if they would agree to have the revenue estimating conference meet again to make that second-year estimate, I think that would be very good. But I feel confident that the number Department of Management has given us is a good number, and based on historical revenue estimates for the state.
Will you be willing to accept anything less than fully appropriated budget bills for the second year?
No, I don't want to. That is the kind of political games that have been played. That's how we got into this fiscal mess. The use of one-time money for ongoing expenses. You've seen the battle this year over indigent defense. That was a decision that was made last year, purposely underfunding an entitlement program that they know we have an obligation to fund, and thereby pretending to the people of Iowa that we're spending less than we really are, pushing that obligation into future years. That's been done with Medicaid in the past. I'm not going to let that happen either. So we're going to want to use honest, conservative, realistic estimates in terms of of the cost of these programs and see that they're fully funded.
Governor, some of the Democrats, I think one of the Democrats issued a statement this morning saying they'd be willing to look at a second year if they got something in return, like more money for education. Would you be willing to give like 2% each year for education if you had a 2-year?
Well, my position on the biennial budget is a position based on the commitment I made to the people of Iowa, and it's not negotiable. I will work with them and look at all issues on their merits. That's always been the way that I've done things. I'm not going to make a deal one for another. I feel very strongly, and I think the people of Iowa elected me to restore financial stability, and a 2-year budget and 5-year projections are part of that.
So there's not going to be any deal making on this?
No.
So how do you address concerns from legislators about locking in spending that far in advance?
Well, that's, you know, a 2-year projection. If you talk to people in business, almost everybody, including where I was at one university, we had a 5-year strategic plan, and most people have a 2-year budget. We do have a 2-year budget for state employee salaries already. So, you know, and we have a problem with that because of what happened last November when Governor Culver just accepted the union's first demand, and we're stuck with that contract for the next 2 years, and we know what it is. And we know we don't have the money to pay for it, so it's going to have to come out of budgets, and that means a reduction in staff, and that's why I still would like to see us renegotiate that. And I've offered, obviously, to negotiate with the unions on those issues. At the federal level, the president has imposed a 2-year freeze on salaries, and in many states, they're actually doing reductions. So I think a 15% increase for those that are not at the top of their pay scale is not inappropriate.
It would seem like we'd be pretty hard pressed to find somebody in this building who didn't know you wanted a 2-year budget. So is this a reminder today for House Republicans or Senate Democrats?
We sent that reminder to both of them last week. So that was done, you know, when I vetoed one bill and vetoed another bill. So I think that was a clear message that we're not going to be playing the political game of transferring money, and we're not going to accept a 1-year budget.
So this is a reminder? What is this today?
We're in the closing days of the session, and based on the Lieutenant Governor's experience and my experience, we know there's a tendency sometimes to cut corners, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. We want to do things right. We want to do them well. We want to make sure they're sustainable for the long term, and that we make the difficult decisions now to put Iowa on the right track for stability and growth. And the other thing I guess I want to focus on is jobs. And I'm going to be looking at those things we can do to reduce the tax and regulatory burden, as well as have this new partnership for economic progress so that we can be successful in attracting the jobs and growing the Iowa economy. And that's going to be extremely important to future years in terms of revenue growth, because revenue to a great degree depends on the strength of the economy, both nationally and in our state.